Rivera. She is a member of the Los Angeles Hands Off Cuba Committee, with whom she attended last year's delegation to Cuba. She is currently organizing with the committee here in Los Angeles, a grassroots organizer and artivist, not just an activist, but an artivist. She's from Pomona, where she began organizing at age 17. It's much earlier than I started. A proud daughter of immigrant and first-generation parents, she has been active on behalf of immigrant families and youth in her community. Destiny.
Thank you. Hi everyone, my name is Destiny Rivera. It is a pleasure to be amongst organizers here in LA, talking about the misuse of Guantanamo Bay, the honestly occupation of Cuba's land. I am an organizer from the city of Pomona. That's where I've done most of my organizing. I started at the age of 17, organizing for immigrant families and youth in the city of Pomona. But I believe in the liberation of all people, peace for all people, and that genocide and also the detention of human beings end. Los Angeles Hands Off Cuba Committee is focused on very simple objectives, which is that the United States remove Cuba from the state sponsors of the terrorism list. This list has made it extremely difficult for Cubans to access essential medical needs, essential metals to build their infrastructure, essential supplements for their own health, food and access. The occupation of the United States in Cuba and the dictatorship before the revolution had stripped a lot of the people who were not elite or of higher class from accessing a lot of resources. Medical care, electricity across Cuba was not accessible besides some of the main capitals like Havana. And so they continue this form of oppression even though the United States no longer has control of the regime in Cuba. It prevents them by putting them on the state sponsorship by basically instilling fear of any other diplomatic nations who want to have diplomatic relations with Cuba, that if you engage with Cuba and you trade, that is going to put your resources, your relations at risk. And so by them being on this sponsored terrorism list, it creates it very difficult for them to trade or have any import goods or buy goods from other countries. This affected them very severely during the COVID pandemic, where the United States and other countries refused to sell any forms of vaccines to Cubans, even though we knew this pandemic was taking lives by the millions. The second objective is that there is an end to the U.S. blockade against Cuba. We lift the travel, trade, and sanctions that are bans that are happening against Cuba. There are more than over 100 sanctions that are against Cuba right now, making it very difficult for the everyday Cuban to lead their lives and to thrive in their own country. And then what we all here to talk about is the return of Guantanamo Naval Base to Cuba, where we are seeing thousands of both citizens and those who have migrated to the country be taken without due process, where they are being dehumanized by being tortured, not being fed well, they're experiencing malnutrition, the place is not being clean, so they're being exposed to diseases and viruses, and they're being cramped up in these spaces. That's happening foreign. It's happening in a completely other person's land, another country. And that is why these things are really essential. Although we may not be living amongst these detention centers, they are being built. One of these detention centers that's taking place in Guantanamo Bay is basically deliberately taking away this torture, so that we as United citizens and we as people of the United States are not aware, and then we don't know how to protest, we don't know how to react. But just because this is not happening in our own land doesn't mean that we don't have responsibility, or we don't assume responsibility to act and to call for the close of the Guantanamo Naval Base that is being used to hold immigrants. If you were be interested in learning about our committee, to learn about the ways in which we support Cuba with medical supplies, we send thousands of dollars worth of medical supplies to Cuba to support their doctors and their medicals, because they have the doctors, they have the skills, but they don't have the medical supplies. And they're also not running short of people who need medical attention. And so we send medical supplies. If that's something of your interest, that is one reason you should get involved with us. You want to learn about the educational, the scientific and cultural contributions that the Cubans not only have thriving within within their own community, but they send thousands of doctors to various countries. China right now is requesting doctors from Cuba so that they can attend to rural places that people have not had their own personal doctor for years, if not ever. And so Cuba is sending their doctors to some of the most rural and distant places where a lot of doctors are not going to give medical services. If you're interested in learning about Hands Off Cuba specifically, you can email us at la.us.handsoffcuba@gmail.com to learn about us. However, what we are currently working on related to the Cubans' well-being is that the Olympics in 2028 are coming up. And it has come to our attention that the United States has denied over 100 visas for Cuban athletes to participate in any pre-qualifying Olympic Games so that they could partake in the 2028 Olympic Games that takes place in the summer. This is one way that the United States remains to have their foot firmly planted on their necks. It's by taking away any opportunities from sports enthusiasts to the everyday person in Cuba from participating in these Olympics. For example, the Cuban national women's team has been denied the right to travel to Puerto Rico for the pre-Olympic qualifying tournament, as well as the Cuban men's basketball team has been barred from competing in the FIBA AmeriCup qualifier in Puerto Rico también. Lastly, and the most really hurtful and devastating is that they denied visas to the officials and chaperones for a Cuban youth softball team with players that are ages between 10 to 13 because they categorized them as a risk to national security. And they were planning to only accept visas for some of the youth, meaning that their chaperones would not be able to attend with them, which puts minors in danger by sending them across borders to attend a game without any supervision, without any support, which is a complete neglection of child rights and child safety. They're also really complicated because they are placed on the state sponsor of terrorism list, which labels children as young as 10 as possible terrorists domestic in our own country. If you're interested in learning about this campaign, here are some of the things that you can do to follow up, because participating in this part of the campaign is your duty or assuming responsibility to support Cubans in any type of form. This is how we go about it. You can visit our campaign website at letcubaplay.com. You will be able to access a volunteer form, but you will be able to also access the endorsements that we've received thus far. And if you have any endorsements that you can personally seek with news journalists, news broadcasts or outlets who are particularly covering the sports segments, that will help strengthen our campaign. If you know any athletes of your own or any notable folks that are in the sports industry that you can connect us to or you can personally pursue an endorsement from, that would greatly support us. And there's an endorsement form that you can personally navigate on our website. Lastly, this is an international Olympic committee that is supposed to be in charge of preventing any form of discrimination against countries and their athletes. There should be no discrimination based on political interferences or political discrimination. And so there is a committee of 109 officials who are in charge of making sure that all countries have an equal opportunity to participate and that no country hosting these games are going to practice any forms of discrimination. Therefore, you should call on your personal International Olympic Committee member who represents your country and give them a call or email them. This list can be accessed through our website, which is letcubaplay.com. You'll be able to give them a call or an email expressing your grievance to help us secure prominent individuals to take a stance against the United States discriminating against Cuba and their athletes. And if you don't want to access our website, but you want to email us directly to learn more, you can email us at letcubaplay@gmail.com. This is also where you can refer any people you know who can support this campaign. This is just one of the many ways you can get involved with work supporting the Cuban people. If that's not your way, you want to be interested in sending medical supplies, you want to be interested in uplifting the cultural and the scientific and political contributions of the Cuban people, that's another way that you can do it. Lastly, I want to say, us as organizers, we don't only operate from here in the United States. We actually travel to Cuba, where we're invited by the labor unions of Cuba and youth activists in Cuba to attend a delegation, where we are on the ground learning the testimonies of everyday people, from doctors, from college students, from folks who run the hotels that we stay at. This is primarily to support the Cuban people and to learn more. We're not just here in the United States going off of what we read and not having everyday individual interactions with people. But we go to Cuba every year as a delegation, taking activists, doctors, veterans, youth, who are there to learn more about people and to exchange information. It's one thing to read things online. It's one thing to see our Instagram reel. It's another to hear these stories face to face and also to take a step into their lives. We're invited to holiday celebrations. We're invited to the Primero de Mayo March. We're invited to a number of activities and events where we're able to have these personal exchanges of information with, and we're not just focusing on things that we read in books. We put the theory to the practice. So if you're interested in getting involved with us, please reach out to us at letcubaplay@gmail.com or la.us.handsoffcuba@gmail.com. Thank you so much, and again, it's Cuba sí, bloqueo no. Cuba sí, bloqueo no. Cuba sí, bloqueo no. Cuba sí, bloqueo no. Thank you.